Joining us now, Admiral James Stavridis, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, the author of 2034, a novel of the next World War. Retired four-star Army General Barry McCaffrey and Yulia Mendel, former press secretary to President Zelensky of Ukraine. Thank you so much to all. Admiral Stavridis, first to you. I want to start with what we've just heard from President Zelensky. How long do you think that this president and his military, civilian as well as his armed forces, can defend Kyiv, first of all, and the rest of his country?
Well, first, I want to say I want to be on President Zelensky's team. I want him as my captain of a warship. He stands and delivers in front of the world, and he does it again and again and again. I have come to admire him deeply. I also worry about him. I'm not sure continuing to sit in a known location like his office is a good idea. It certainly has symbolic value, but he has become what we call in the military trade a center of gravity. That is something around which all else revolves in combat. So to lose him would be a blow to the heart for the Ukrainians. So that's point one. Point two, very quickly, I'll give you a comparison when we talk about how long this could go on. So in Fallujah, in Iraq, a place General McCaffrey knows quite well, the 1st Marine Division was ordered to take the city of Fallujah, which was a low-built city of about 400,000. The 1st Marine Division, one of the most elite shock combat troops in the United States. It took months. So the idea that this increasingly, evidently incompetent Russian military is going to go waltzing into Kiev, a city of almost 4 million, 10 times the size of Fallujah, with conscripts and take it, I think is pretty unlikely. So buckle up. This is going to go on for a while.
Yulia Mendel, as someone who worked so closely with President Zelensky in the past, tell us how he has evolved. Even when I was there in June, there were some of his former advisors thinking he had not been tough enough on the oligarchs. Some had left his employ. So did you see this inner strength in him, even as he resisted President Trump back in the day?
Well, thank you for this question. Actually, the presidency of Volodymyr Zelensky, of course, was full of very unexpected and unbelievable challenges. And he might be accused in many things, and half of this partially is just an opposition criticism. In fact, he did a lot of measures to fight oligarchs inside the country, and he did a lot of steps to align Ukrainian legislation to the European Union legislation. But I know, as a person who's been working with President Zelensky for over 2 years, that he's the kind of person who never gives up. And this is what he exactly shows in this type of challenge as military invasion, brutal, cynical invasion from Russia to Ukraine nowadays. But I wanted to add a very important point right now. This oil ban from Western countries, including the US oil ban, is like a big present for International Women's Day, which is very popular on post-Soviet space nowadays. However, looking at the dynamics of the war in Ukraine and at the American military hesitancy, we can say that there can be a decay of global confidence in American superpowers these days, because it does not matter if and when Ukraine defends ourselves. We see that there is already some hesitancy in American leadership, global leadership, because what we see right now, that all the sanctions are having quite long-term or mid-term effect, while Ukrainians are being killed every moment.
Well, understandably, there's been a lot of anger, resistance in Ukraine and Ukraine's supporters and in Congress to the American reluctance, for instance, on the no-fly zone. General McCaffrey and Admiral Stavridis, I'd like you both to weigh in here, because we are told by the administration, General McCaffrey, to you first, we're told that the no-fly zone not only doesn't work, that some of these MiGs that Poland has can't be operated by Ukrainian pilots, that it's a different type of MiG that they were used to, that they have enough Stingers and drones, and we can keep resupplying them with Stingers and drones to take down, as they have effectively been doing, the helicopters and the other air assets that Russia has. So give us your your view of how correct or incorrect the U.S. is in resisting the no-fly zone.
Well, look, first of all, to support Admiral Stavridis' viewpoint, the courage, the heroic leadership of President Zelensky, the coming to the colors of the entire Ukrainian population is simply magnificent. And there is a good parallel to the Great Britain in 1940, fighting alone. But back to the, pushing on closed doors is not a good thing for Ukraine to do now. NATO is not going to intervene in the ground or air war in Ukraine, period. The political decision, which I personally support, was this would open World War III potentially, but certainly directly involve us in combat operations against the Russians. U.S. Air Force can clear the skies of Ukraine in a week or so, but it would also involve going after Russian air defense missile units inside Russia, of striking ground units who engage U.S. aircraft, of trying to stop low-flying helicopters. It's not going to happen without what, in essence, is us becoming a belligerent in the war. I think the other thing that we need to focus on is we can't create a Ukrainian battle force with mobile armor and Patriot air defense systems and supplying them with high-performance fighters. That's the work of a year or so. So I think in a very important way, U.S.-European Command has organized individual European Union countries to supply smart munitions, rations, armor plating, helmets, and to support the gigantic refugee problem and internally displaced. But I'm a little bit concerned. We're simply not going to fight on the ground or in the air inside Ukraine, nor should we.
Admiral Stavridis, let me ask you also, there seems to be an American reluctance to speak to war crimes, and that some of this may be tactical, that we're not prepared to go after Vladimir Putin immediately. We're investigating, we say. It's very obvious that the nuclear attack, that the attack on hospitals, we're discussing all of these things in that context, but officials are not talking about labeling them war crimes yet. Is that to preserve the possibility of diplomacy down the road with Vladimir Putin so that we can try to negotiate something if he's willing to concede?
Yes, I think that is the tactical consideration. And the administration is pursuing that. That's a decision they've made. To my eye, as a professional military officer at one time, these are war crimes. It's quite simple. And I know General McCaffrey would agree with me. And I simply want to also add to his excellent summary of why it is so risky to do the no-fly zone. I have implemented a new no-fly zone. I put one up over Libya as the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. They're hard. And newsflash, the people up in those aircraft on both sides are very young. The potential for miscalculation and combat to ensue is quite high. Final point to General McCaffrey's thought, what kind of force are we going to build here? Look, we need to be the Minutemen from the American Revolution. That's what Ukraine can be. The Russians are the British in this analogy. They're the redcoats. We need to give the Minutemen what they need. We need to create a Ukrainian force that can take them apart, and they're doing it, but they've got to do it smart and on the ground.
Well, thank you all for a very, vigorous discussion. We really appreciate it. To all of you, Yulia Mendel, and of course, Admiral Stavridis and General McCaffrey.